Morning to Paul Britton, who joins me live in the studio. Paul, thank you so much for joining us at this unearthly hour to go through the papers this morning. It is much appreciated. Before we get into any discussion in depth, I think we need to root through the front pages and see what they are saying. So we will start off with the Daily Mail. Daily Mail says that as experts warn, a rise in the bill cap next year could hit £6,600. Energy hikes may wipe out savings for 6 million people. Now, I have to tell you that the use of the word may troubles me, because I don't like it when newspapers go on hypothesis. You know, if you are actually saying as a fact that 6 million households will lose their savings, then that's very different to may, because that's exactly the same way that people used to talk about the coronavirus as well, COVID. They used to say that many thousands, if not hundreds, tens of thousands of people may lose their life this season because of a new variant. May doesn't give us any certainty, does it?
Oh, morning, Phil. May is if we look at the actual word, may is a positive, so it probably means may and probably will. They are journalists. If it was might, it might be might, but probably won't mean that. But I think it is going to wipe out the savings for many people across the country, and I think that because I know that my energy bill, and I'm sure you're the same, has skyrocketed in the last few years. I remember just maybe two and a half years ago, I think I was paying about 14p a kilowatt. I've just changed tariffs and it's over 40p. I don't know how it gets to that sort of level, and I really don't know what our politicians and what our leaders of this country think that people are going to do, particularly earlier on in life. So let's talk about 20-year-olds that are coming out of university with record debts owed to the student loans company and owed back to the government, and they've borrowed just so they can get a decent education.
Well, in light of the fact now that, of course, we've heard within the last week or so that they're now talking of bringing student fees for the UK in line with foreign students as well.
I mean, that would just be outrageous. I mean, if you think about that, and then the cost of trying to buy a property with what mortgages cost at the moment, and in terms of interest and property prices.
And Help to Buy ending in October.
And now they're being told your energy bills are going to be £3,500 a year, and could be as much as £6,000 by April next year. People have been criticised for catastrophising the situation. I think this is probably the most serious thing that has affected the British people since, well, before COVID, before Brexit, the war in Ukraine. This is the biggest thing that faced the everyday people that are going to affect us in this country.
They say that the situation we find ourselves in at the moment is akin only to after the Second World War. That's what many economists have compared it to. And if that doesn't ring alarm bells, I don't know what does. But anyway, so I've certainly chosen the wrong time to start paying the bills by myself. You were saying you don't know about my energy bills. Well, it is true, because up until recently I've always lived with others, but no, now I'm paying all the bills on my own, and I think I chose the wrong time for that. That's the front page of the Daily Mail, but I have to tell you though, most of the front pages, they talk about the same thing, because the Eye says Truss U-turn on energy handout, but 6 million will lose savings. Frontrunner for PM completes U-turn and is set to give extra winter fuel payment to pensioners, and as 80% hike in bills plunge millions into fuel poverty. That's the front page of the Eye. As I say, we'll go into more details of that particular story in just a moment, but the Times carries on the theme where they say energy bills hit £3,500 with worst yet to come, warning of double-digit inflation for a year. That is the front page of the Times this morning. And then if we have a look at the Star says rock exclusive. I believe that's a play on words. Not a very clever one. Aussie, I'm haunted by spirits. And in brackets, no, not that sort. Star sees ghosts in mansion. Of course you do, Aussie. Daily Mirror. I said this earlier. I will say it again, because I think credit where it is due. I think I agree with the Mirror this morning. Our whole country is facing an energy bills catastrophe. For heaven's sakes, do something. That is what they lead with. Do you know, I very rarely find myself, if at all, ever agreeing with the Mirror and the Guardian. In fact, I can hand on heart say I don't think I've ever agreed with the front page of The Guardian and The Mirror on the same day. But today is one of those days. And frankly, Paul, it does feel like someone needs to do something.
But who? I mean, the problem that we have at the moment is it Boris? Does Boris want to make that decision for the country and then only to be replaced in September by either Rishi or Trust?
Well, wouldn't it be quite nice for Boris if he actually did something nice for us to remember him by?
I think you're absolutely right. I think he should be making the decision now. People need action now. And let's face it, time is of the essence. If he doesn't act now and we wait for a new Prime Minister to come in and they start acting, how long is it going to take for them to actually get the wheels in motion and get the help to the people that need it most?
So the problem is that I suppose it's a no-win situation, because if Boris was to correct this now, then people would say, well, hang on a second, you've had the opportunity to do this for literally years. You know, it is your government has been in power, and I know people are going to say the Tories have been in power for 12 years, but I think people forget the first 4 years was coalition, but let's not dwell on that too much. But they say the Tories have been in power for years. They must have seen this coming. They had the opportunity to do something about it, and they didn't. So if Boris was to correct it, that's the response he'll get. If he doesn't do anything and leaves it to the next Prime Minister, whoever that will be, is then people are going to start saying, you know, it's disgusting, even to the end he was vile. So I suppose if he just sneaks off as quietly as he can, maybe he thinks that's the best way out.
But Phil, what are they going to do? I mean, if they talk about giving us £400 back, it's just not enough.
It's an insult. It's absolutely a joke.
The bill's doubled, but we get £400 back. It could triple or quadruple, and then they'll give us £1,000 back. So we're paying £6, but now we're paying £5 when we used to pay £1,500.
Well, I mean, the thing that amuses me to some degree, and amuses me in a nervous kind of way, not because I find it hilarious, but if the energy cap was lowered, right, and I'm not talking about sort of lowered back down to the sort of the 1,600 it is now or whatever, but lower right back down again to basically pre-Ukraine invasion levels. And we were to say that to the energy companies, you will not charge households more than this amount of money. Rather, instead, with smart meters now, I absolutely refuse to believe there isn't a way of actually monitoring those who waste energy. And by when I say waste energy, I mean that there is a constant light on. For example, look at some of the office buildings here in London. I know, I fully appreciate that there'll be people around the country who don't know what the situation's like in London. But we are, at the moment, very near to where the city is. And it is the weekend. And as I'm driving in here this evening, I couldn't help but observe virtually every single building that I drove past has got lights left on. Who are they on for? Who are those lights for? Why don't you, energy companies, penalise those who waste energy? Rather than penalise those who are actually decent, hard-working people who actually really are struggling to cope with the cost of living, why don't they have a go at those people who waste energy?
Yeah, I think there is a slight distinction between companies who already pay astronomical amounts anyway and consumers, residences. But I mean, it is a good point. I don't think there's a shortage of energy. There's not a shortage of electricity. I mean, it's not like the water at the moment when we rely on the rain to top up our reserves and then we're restricted on our hosepipe bans.
No, I don't think this is so much about a waste of energy. But what I mean is that they obviously want to try and claw back the money because of how much it's costing at wholesale level. So if that's the case, the way they could try and balance those books is by going after those who clearly can afford to leave lights on 24/7 and not think a thing of it, rather than targeting those who are struggling to leave the lights on for a few minutes of the day. Never mind whether or not they can leave it on overnight in an entire building, which must cost tens of thousands, not hundreds of thousands of pounds.
There's a campaign at the moment called Don't Pay UK, where they're trying to get 1 million consumers to stop paying their bills. And one of the tips that they're saying is switch everything off, turn everything off at the plug. Let's use less electricity, let's use less energy. And then the knock-on effect to the energy companies is if we're using less, they can charge us less, they make less profit. But on top of that, if if everyone turns things off, I mean, I know that in my house now, even I've been affected. I go round and turn all the plugs off when I'm not at home. If I know I'm staying in London for a few days, I can switch off at the fuse box. So I know categorically I'm using nothing. And that is a good tip. If people switch from direct debit to actually paying their bill when it comes
as and when,
in,
yeah, definitely.
That's
as and when
another
it comes
thing,
in.
because a lot of the time the direct debit is more than what your energy usage is. So,
and then it's a mission to try and get that money back.
So the energy company has a surplus of money all the time. They're always in credit, and consumers are in credit. So that's another thing that you can do. But you don't want to be caught out in the winter. So if you do cancel your direct debit and only pay your bill, it's probably sensible to pay the difference into savings, so that when your winter bills start coming in, you do have money which you can draw upon, rather than it being the energy company that's in credit. You're in credit in your own personal account.
Some very sound advice from Paul Britton there, leading criminal defence lawyer and founder of Britton and Time, who's going through the papers for us this morning. We will carry on looking through the papers and maybe taking some of your calls as well. 0344 499 1000. You are watching Talk TV live from the Talk Radio studios.